The rain had turned the battlefield into a muddy wasteland. Each step a struggle, each breath a reminder of the war he hadn't asked for. Corporal James Miller crouched behind the shattered remnants of what had once been a farmhouse, his uniform torn, boots caked with mud, and heart pounding like a war drum in his chest. Around him, the echoes of gunfire and the distant cries of fallen comrades seemed to blur into a haunting symphony of chaos. He hadn't seen his unit for hours. The last explosion had thrown him off course, separated him from everyone he knew, everyone he trusted. And yet, despite the fear gnawing at his insides, he knew he had to move to survive, because giving up wasn't an option. Not when survival itself was a kind of defiance against the war that had swallowed so many lives. He remembered the letter he had held in his breast pocket. That morning before the battle began, the words from his younger sister had been simple, naive and full of hope. "Come back to us. James, we need you." Clutching it now, torn and wet from the rain, he allowed himself a momentary flash of home. His small town in Kansas, the smell of cornfields after rain, the warm laughter of his family around the dinner table. That memory alone was a lifeline, a fragile thread holding him to something beyond the mud, blood and smoke. Moving forward was dangerous. Every shadow could be an enemy soldier, every sound a potential death sentence. James had learned to move silently, to trust his instincts more than his eyes, which could deceive him in the dim light of the stormy evening. He crawled through trenches, rolled under fallen trees, and even risked the open ground, heart-hammering, until he found a ruined barn where he could rest, if only briefly. Inside, he discovered what he would later call a miracle, a small stash of supplies left behind, perhaps by someone less fortunate or a hurried retreat. Canned food, stale bread, a water canteen half full. It wasn't much, but it was enough to keep his body from collapsing completely. That night, as he huddled in the corner of the barn, listening to the wind whistling through the broken windows and the distant rumble of artillery, James thought about the others. Private Hernandez, who had joked about being afraid of chickens but was fearless in combat. Sergeant Thompson, the stoic man who always seemed to know what to do next, whose eyes had betrayed a lifetime of pain hidden behind a calm exterior. They were gone now, scattered across the battlefield, casualties of a war that seemed to take without mercy. James swallowed the lump in his throat, refusing to let despair take hold, because survival was an act of defiance. The next day brought new horrors. As James tried to navigate the devastated countryside, he stumbled upon a wounded enemy soldier, barely conscious, crawling through the mud. For a split second, the ingrained hatred and fear of the enemy rose in him. But then he saw something that pierced through the war-hardened shell around his heart. The soldier's eyes, wide with terror, mirroring his own. Without thinking, James offered a hand. The man looked at it, confused, then slowly allowed himself to be dragged to safety in a small ditch. It was an unspoken truth, one that the war tried to erase. Survival wasn't just about fighting. It was about holding on to humanity, even when every instinct screamed otherwise. Food became scarce. James rationed what little he had, hunting small animals, fishing in muddy streams, and scavenging abandoned houses. He discovered a pattern to survival that no manual could teach: the ability to adapt, to read the land, to move when the enemy expected him to stay, to hide when danger was visible. Each day was a test, each night a battle against fatigue, fear, and the gnawing loneliness that threatened to break him more than any bullet ever could. One evening, as dusk settled like a heavy blanket over the forest, James heard voices. They were faint, distant, but unmistakable American voices. Panic and hope collided within him. He crept toward the sound, keeping low, crawling through underbrush, until he stumbled upon a small group of soldiers, survivors like him, huddled around a makeshift fire. They were ragged, hungry, and broken, but alive. Recognition and relief washed over him in a wave so intense it left him shaking. He had found them, not just a unit, but a sense of belonging, a reason to continue, a reminder that he wasn't truly alone in this war-torn world. Yet survival wasn't over. The enemy was relentless, patrolling, searching, and expecting surrender. James knew he couldn't afford complacency. Over the next weeks, he moved with the group. Each day a mixture of stealth, strategy, and sheer luck. They scavenged, fought when necessary, and hid when they could. Every narrow escape, every meal shared, every quiet night beneath the stars became a story in itself, a testament to human resilience in the face of unimaginable adversity. As winter approached, the world seemed to close in. Snow replaced mud, freezing his fingers. stiffening his limbs, making every movement a painful effort. Illness stalked the men, frostbite, fevers, exhaustion, but still, they pressed on. James discovered an inner strength he never knew existed, a stubborn refusal to be defeated by circumstances beyond his control. Memories of home, of the promise to his sister, of the faces of fallen friends, became fuel for his determination. Finally, after months of living on the knife edge of life and death, James and the small group of survivors reached the Allied lines. Exhausted, battered, and forever changed, they stepped into a world that had moved on without them. Soldiers barely recognized them as men. They looked more like ghosts than the young men who had once laughed and joked under sunny skies. But James knew that survival had given him something no enemy could ever take, a story of courage, a testament to resilience, and a reminder that even in the darkest moments, the human spirit could endure. Years later, James would tell this story, often in fragments, never in full, because some memories were too heavy to share. But he never forgot the faces of the comrades who had fallen, the terror of being hunted, or the quiet moments when hope flickered like a candle in a storm. Every day he lived was a victory, a tribute to those who hadn't made it, and a reminder that survival wasn't just a matter of luck. It was about courage, humanity, and the relentless will to keep moving forward, no matter the cost.